Imagine stepping into the closet of a woman who was considered truly elegant in 1955. Before you even touch a single dress, I want you to notice something. Half of what's hanging in your own closet right now, she would never have worn outside her bedroom. I'm not talking about expensive clothes. I'm talking about a way of thinking before getting dressed, one that most of us lost without even noticing. I remember going through old family photographs and asking myself why every single woman looked so put together, even in the most ordinary snapshots, at the grocery store, at the bus stop, just standing on a porch. And once I started researching the actual etiquette of the time, I understood something that changed how I look at my own wardrobe completely. There's one piece on this list that might surprise you the most. Something you probably wore this very week without a second thought. Now, who was the most elegant woman in your own family? Was it your mother? Your grandmother? Maybe an aunt who always seemed to walk into a room and own it without saying a word? Tell me in the comments. I have a feeling we're about to recognize a lot of familiar names. And the moment you picture her, that elegant woman in your family, there are certain things you instinctively know she would never have stepped out of the house wearing. Leggings used as pants would have been almost unthinkable. Now, tight-fitting garments existed back then, of course they did, but they belonged to the dance studio, to exercise, to the privacy of the home. It wasn't about modesty in the way people assume today. It was about visual language. Every single piece of clothing carried a message about where it belonged. And wearing the wrong message in the wrong room was the social equivalent of speaking the wrong language at a dinner party. Sweatshirts followed the exact same rule. They were athletic wear, plain and simple. The idea of pulling one on to go meet a friend for lunch, to run errands downtown, to board an airplane, and yes, I know that's the uniform of half the airports in this country now, would have struck a 1955 woman as genuinely strange. Not offensive, just out of place, like wearing a swimsuit to the grocery store. And the same went for athletic sneakers. They existed. Women owned them. But they came out for tennis, for the gymnasium, for a walk in the park. For everything else, visiting a neighbor, doing the shopping, meeting someone for coffee, the expected choice was a pump, a loafer, a structured sandal. Something that said, I prepared for this moment. I didn't just roll out of bed. And once you understand that logic, that every piece was a sentence in a visual conversation, a lot of modern habits start to look very different. Take torn clothing. Today we treat ripped jeans as a style choice, sometimes even an expensive one. In 1955, a tear in your clothing meant one of two things. You'd been careless, or you couldn't afford better. Neither was something a woman who valued her reputation would broadcast on purpose. Keeping your clothes in beautiful condition wasn't vanity. It was part of how you showed the world that you respected yourself. The same was true of pajamas. There was a hard, almost sacred line between what you wore inside the house and what you wore outside of it. The very notion of pajama-inspired clothing on the street, which fashion designers periodically try to revive even today, would have been incomprehensible to her. Bedroom things stayed in the bedroom. That was the whole rule. And large logos? Big, bold lettering stamped across the chest of a shirt? Girls, I have to tell you, that would have stopped a 1955 woman in her tracks. Elegance back then was about the quality of the fabric, the cut of the shoulder, the way the waist was constructed. It was never about advertising a brand name on your body. The clothing was supposed to draw attention to the woman wearing it, not to the company that made it. But here's the part I find most striking the more I research this. None of it worked in isolation. A beautiful dress on its own meant very little if the shoes were wrong, or the bag clashed, or the hair hadn't been pinned properly. The whole appearance was built as one complete picture. Fabric, hairstyle, makeup, posture, accessories, all speaking at the same volume. And the second something broke that harmony, even a perfectly good dress lost its power. I have a feeling many daughters and granddaughters have never heard it described this way. If someone came to mind while you were watching, send this to her. Sometimes one conversation pulls a whole generation of memories back to the surface. And it's that idea of harmony that finally lets us talk honestly about one piece almost every video gets wrong. Jeans. You'll hear people say that no elegant woman in the 1950s ever wore jeans, that they were forbidden, that they were considered scandalous. That's not true, and it bothers me a little every time I see it repeated. Jeans were absolutely worn, especially by younger women, partly thanks to James Dean and Marilyn Monroe putting them on the cultural map. What's true is something subtler. Jeans belong to leisure, to weekend errands, to ranch work, to a day off. An elegant woman could own a pair and wear them on a Saturday afternoon at home, but she would not have worn them to visit a friend's parents, to attend church, to go to a luncheon, to sit at someone's dinner table. The rule was never about the fabric. It was about the occasion. And that's the part we've forgotten. We took a contextual rule and turned it into a myth. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of thing that surprised me most when I started digging into these old closets. Once I started comparing original magazines, store catalogs, and photographs, I realized how many small details had quietly disappeared over the years. If you'd like to discover more of the forgotten beauty and elegance secrets our mothers trusted, you'll find everything through the QR code on your screen and the pinned comment below. And once you start looking closely at those photographs, really closely, there's a secret most people miss. It's not that those women had more expensive clothes. Many of them didn't. The secret was sitting at a sewing machine in almost every neighborhood. Taking a dress, a skirt, a coat to a seamstress for small adjustments was simply part of buying clothes. Hems were raised or lowered, waists were taken in, sleeves were shortened. A jacket that came off the rack at the department store almost never stayed exactly as it came off the rack. It was adjusted to the body of the woman wearing it. And that, more than anything, is why the photographs of the era look the way they do. The clothing fit. Not in the loose, approximate way we accept today, dragging a hem on the floor or letting a shoulder seam fall halfway down the arm. It fit the woman. It followed her shape. It belonged to her. The accessories did the same kind of quiet work. The handbag was chosen to match. The shoes echoed something in the outfit. The jewelry was usually small, deliberate, never competing for attention. A hat or a pair of gloves wasn't decoration for its own sake. It was the final piece that made the picture feel complete. Nothing was thrown together. Nothing was added at the last second on the way out the door. And then there was the part nobody really teaches anymore. The way she walked. The way she sat down. The way she carried a purse across her arm or held a coat over her shoulder. Posture was treated as the extension of the outfit. You could put a beautiful dress on a slouched, hurried, distracted body, and most of its elegance would simply drain away. Girls, I have to be honest with you. Elegance never ended at the closet door. It walked out of the house with her. And once you see all of that working together, it becomes very clear why our world looks the way it does now, and why so much of what they did has quietly disappeared. We chose convenience. We chose speed. We chose comfort over preparation. There's no point pretending that's not the trade. The whole ritual of getting dressed, choosing, adjusting, accessorizing, finishing, was replaced by something much shorter and much easier. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that's a tragedy. People have lives to live. But something was lost in that exchange. And I think it's worth being honest about what. Now, I also want to be careful here, because the truth is more layered than a video can usually fit. Not every woman in the 1950s was elegant all the time. That picture we have in our heads, the perfect dress, the perfect hair, the perfect kitchen, was real for some, partial for others, and completely out of reach for many. A working farm wife in Iowa wasn't dressed the way a Manhattan socialite was. A young factory worker in Detroit wasn't styled the way a department store buyer in Chicago was. Class, region, age, profession, all of that shaped what a woman actually wore from one day to the next. And I'd never want to romanticize that decade as a whole. There were things about that time that were hard, things that were unfair, things I would not wish back on any woman I love. The world they lived in had its own shadows, and I'm not interested in pretending otherwise. But none of that takes away from what they understood about dressing. Because the deepest lesson here isn't really about clothing at all. It's about the idea that what you wear is a quiet form of respect for the occasion, for the people you're with, for yourself. That principle didn't depend on a particular decade. It didn't depend on a particular income. And as different as our world is now, I think that principle is still beautiful. Girls, if these conversations make you feel understood instead of just sold to, I'd love it if you'd give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep this little corner of shared memories growing. And as we close that closet door one last time, I want you to notice something. Almost nothing inside it was forbidden on its own. There were no banned colors, no impossible prohibitions, no real rules of fabric. What there was, and what we mostly lost, was a deep sense of occasion, a habit of pausing to think before getting dressed, a quiet intention behind every small choice. And maybe that's exactly why, all these decades later, those photographs still make us stop and look twice. Before we close that closet door for the very last time, remember this. Our mothers weren't trying to be elegant. They were trying to be appropriate, thoughtful, and gracious. If you'd like to keep rediscovering the wisdom they quietly left behind, everything is waiting for you through the QR code and the pinned comment. After that, keep watching my previous video, where we uncover another forgotten part of their world. And if today's memories touched your heart, leave a comment, share this with someone you love, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.